Hello and welcome back. This is part 2 of benchmarking smelting with drones. So if you remember, in the last episode we tried out a whole load of different builds for beaconed smelting with drones. There's a bunch of them, there's 8 different builds. Now I'll just run through them again quickly. This is a standard 8.8 with each machine having its own input and output chest. So this is the simple, stupid, don't think about it build. Right. The next build up is, let's put down power on each one so it doesn't flash quite as badly. The next one down is essentially the same build, but with shared chests. And I'm using stack inserters everywhere in these builds, which I may revisit later. The trains are, there's a void train and there's an infinite supply train. So that means we have to do the work to fill up the provider boxes and to empty the requester boxes. And it turns out to keep this whole thing supplied, we need 2 boxes per carriage. That provides enough material to keep things going. If we go down to 1 provider per carriage, some of these builds actually consume slightly more raw materials than can be provided, which is nice to know. Alright, so that's the next, that's an 8 beacon with shared boxes. This is a 10 beacon with their own boxes, obviously. So this has the same stride as the 8 beacon build, but every other machine has been replaced with a beacon. Okay, so each individual machine is running faster, but there's only half as many machines. The next build is a 12 beacon build, where each machine has its own inserters, and there's a 3-tile strip space above each smelter. There's nothing you can do about that. This takes 3, this takes 3, which is a total of 6. This takes 3, this takes 2, so you've got 1 left over. Okay, the next build here. This is essentially this build, but turned sideways. So that the position of these boxes is 1 tile higher, it's where that inserter would be, and then the other one is above it. So these boxes generally are a little bit further away from the drones. Might not make a difference, might make a difference, we will find out. This build is essentially this, but we've sacrificed a couple of speed beacons to move the whole thing down 1 tile. So perhaps moving things down 1 tile makes a difference. Who knows? We will find out. Then this build here is horizontally sharing boxes. So it's a 12 beacon build with horizontally shared boxes. And the main problem with this is that we can only fit 2 strips, so we can't fit that many assemblers in. At the 3rd strip, the midline is outside the logistics range for these drones, right? As you can see that. And then this build is similar to that, except the shared chests run up and down. And other than that, it's pretty much identical, except because it runs up and down, we can fit, because there's quite a big overhang here, you can see there's room to fit this extra machine up if we cheat and turn the final box sideways. Okay, and then that's it. Those are our 8 builds. So, what did I do? Let's go here. What I did was set up an empty world. This empty world just has our trains set up, our void train and our supply train and our power. So let's load up S1. This world is only the first build, the 8 beacon shared chests. Okay, and this is how it works all the way through. So for S1, S2, S3, S4, all the way through, I just set it up so that that one build is running. There's nothing else in the world, and each time this was built again from scratch from S0. So what I couldn't really do was check that these were definitely producing at the rate they should have been with no browned out machines. The best I could do was look at the stats. So this is tinkering backs and forwards between 21 and 22k. I think in practice it needs more roboports because there's a lot of drone charging and there's the occasional machine that's flashing on and off. Right, but yeah. So the combination of that seems to have got rid of the flickering. What I didn't do was sit around for hours trying to attune this to get the absolutely best out of it. Yeah, so I think that's probably fixed a little glitch with that. Okay. However, you'll see what that does to figures in a minute. So, okay, so let's save that as S1. We can re-benchmark that in a minute. Okay, so let's go to another one just so that we can see it running. All right, so this is our S8 build. It's a bit of a horror show, nothing's lined up, but it's running. So if you were doing this for real, you'd shift everything around, center everything, make it pretty. Okay, so what did I do then? Well, Factorio has a command line option. Right, let's see if I can do this. Yeah, let's see if I can make this display. Right, full screen that. You probably can't see anything. View, Control plus. Okay, so around about here, I'm running Factorio with dash benchmark and the name of the save file, and then dash benchmark ticks 10,000. So what that does is loads Factorio, then it gets to the 90% loading point, and then runs the game without any graphics at all. And it just runs the updates, prints out something every 100 updates until it's got up to the 10,000 the 100,000 updates that I requested. Then it tells me how many milliseconds it took to do that. Okay. Computers aren't entirely reliable. Things change, things speed up, things slow down. What I did was run each one twice. If I was a medic, I'd have run it 3 times and taken an average. I ran it twice, and then I put the results into a spreadsheet. And this is my spreadsheet. So build 1 is the 8 beacons with its own chest. This is build 2, shared chest, and so on down. Okay, so S1 has 114 smelters, the next one has 80, 60, 60, 42, 56, 36, 48, 48. They have varying numbers of beacons. So the first build has 176 beacons, 260 inserters, 130 requested chests, 130 provider chests. It required 550 logistics to run. We now know it required 600 to run at full speed. Okay, and the theoretical rate was 22k, so it was actually running at the high 21s because we were missing those extra drones. So this is our rate of production, assuming it was running at max, which it should have been. Then I ran it twice and collected the timings, and this is the timings in milliseconds. Okay. This number is just in a fatter font for reasons I don't understand. Is there a clear all formatting thing? No, I don't think there is. Anyway. Okay. So then I took the average of these two numbers and checked that the difference wasn't a massive percentage. So the differences here don't really get above 2%. So anything further on, which is a difference of, a lot more than 2%, is a significant difference. Then we can calculate some stats. So the tricky thing I did was, do you remember the empty world, the world that just had the backbone in it? I also benchmarked that. And what that tells me is the cost of Factorio iterating over a world. And you can see the cost is 84,000, 85,000, that sort of ballpark. So when we have 122,000 versus 84,000, there's actually a cost of 36,000. That is what you have to add on to the average cost of running the world empty to get to the average cost of running that world with that build in. Okay, so there's actually quite a high cost of running the 8.8 with its own chests. It's cheaper to run the 8.8 with shared chests in terms of runtime. Okay. However, the rate of production was much lower on that one. So 14 rather than 22k. So these are the numbers. So what we want here is bigger numbers, because bigger numbers mean more production per thing. So let's format this with a color scale. Red is bad, green is good. Okay, so the 8 beacon has a totally lousy production rate per smelter. Not that surprising because it's the least beaconed one. The 12s are coming in at 275. The 271, 272s are the builds where I had to sacrifice the occasional beacon to fill in the drone ports. There would have been ways to finagle that so that I didn't need to sacrifice them, but I only thought of them after I'd done the benchmarking. And you can see there is a hit here for the 12 beacon build with their own chests, shuffled sideways, where I had to drop off 2 of the beacons at the bottom. It did cost us a 4%, sorry, 0.4% on, whatever that number is. Anyway, it's in the hundredths, but it is a number, right? It does cost. So conditional formatting, rate per inserter. Okay, so I'm using Factorio movement keys in a spreadsheet. That's not going to end well. Right, so the best production per inserter is the 12 beacon build with their own chests at 108. The second best is the 12 beacon build's own chest sideways shuffled. Okay. Then we could ask, what is the rate of production per drone in the system? All right. And this is quite interesting. So the rate of production per drone is actually really good in the 8 beacon builds. So if what you care about is the amount of work a drone does, the 8 beacon builds are brilliant for that. And I can see how if you were tuning these setups by dropping drones in and then dividing out how much you were getting by how many drones we used, and then sort of assuming that correlated to charge rate, which then was how much overhead there was, that could start to sound like a really good build. The 8 beacon builds are pretty much way away from everything except this build here with the horizontally shared chests. So they're really good for drone use. This one here is shocking. This is the sideways shuffled build. Yeah, So there you are. Okay. Then this is really the one you care about. This is the rate at which we were producing the materials divided by the timing cost. So how much time per unit material. Okay, so let's look at the worst two first of all. So the 8 beacon build with shared chests is the worst possible option for UPS. The second worst possible option for UPS is horizontally shared chests. So chest sharing is not good. If you're thinking of doing a build and you want to share on UPS, sharing chests is not the way to do it. And I can only think the reason for that is that the inserters pulling stuff out, 2 inserters interrogating the same chest, it has to do some deadlocking. So there must be some overhead to 2 inserters pulling out from a single chest where they're both trying to get at the same material. Now, this is the apparent winner, 78, and that is clearly better than 70, which is the second best. Okay, so being someone who's been stung by these kind of things before, I went away and loaded up the game to have a look at that. That is the 12 beacon shared horizontal chests build. Cool. Ran it. Had a look. It was running with 350 bots, and theoretically it should have been producing 13k per minute. Looked at it, there were red lights. The thing wasn't running at full throughput, and all those machines which were not running, when they were stalled, were not costing UPS. They weren't, their inserters weren't, the whole of that bit of the build was dead. That artificially inflated it lowered the UPS figure, and because this isn't the recorded production, but instead the calculated production, the production wasn't taken into account. I reran this with 400 drones rather than 350, and this time took care to burn in the production graphs, or both the 350 and 400, to make sure. Okay, so when you do that, the production is 0.68, which is not bad. I mean, it's really good, but it's clearly nowhere near the 0.78. The 0.78 figure we were getting because the build wasn't running. So it was more like an empty world, all for the want of 50 drones. So if we edit this to 11,000, which is more realistic because the machines were red. Now this is 0.66. This is no longer the best build. So we have a 0.68, which is the horizontally shared boxes. We have a 0.69, which is the 12 beacon chests with the sideways shuffling, and a 0.70, which is 12 beacons with their own chests. Okay, so where does that leave us? There are 2 things about builds which I prize: their performance and their simplicity. So, in terms of performance, the most performant build for smelting is a 12 beacon setup where each box has its own chests, no shared chests. The second best performant one is the sideways shuffled is effectively the same build. So the second best performant build is horizontally shared chests. Sorry, vertically shared chests, sorry. Right. So this row we can ignore because this is the bad build. So 68, 69, 70. 69 is just a variation on what we had. 68, that's the one. Okay. But the build with the horizontally ved shared chests had a rate that was really not very good. So 11,000 compared to this one, which is 16,000, right? So this is the second best production rate. This is one of the worst. So this speaks to how many modules you would need to stamp down. So I keep using Factorio things, right? So this one is the highest production per module bar the 8.8, and it is the most efficient for UPS build bar none. So simple is better, right? We can fit more of these down on the map. That means fewer train stations, less train routing. So let's load a game. So we're going to S4 load. Yeah, so this is the build. This is the simplest build. It's the most performant for UPS build, and barring the 8.8, which is a bit of a disaster for other reasons, it is the highest production per stamp build. So this is the build. There are other options for optimizing this. We can add a clock for the outputs. You can see the outputs here are going all the time, despite there being very little work for them to do most of the time. The other optimization, these which are loading the train, they don't always move 12 items, so it might be worth putting a wire on these so that they are only active when there are at least 12 in the box. They're both optimizations we can run, and they're actually pretty simple to check, because it's just a question of cloning this world 2 more times, well, I guess 3 times. We want to put it in once with the wires on here, once with the wires on the outputs with a clock, and then once with both of those optimizations, and see if they actually make a difference. But I haven't got time to do that today. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this. These differences in some cases are quite marginal. You know, all the high 60 builds are fine, right? But you probably don't want to be using the 50s builds. You probably want to be using the high 60s, which is basically the 12 beacon builds, with sharing or with no sharing. But if you're doing box sharing, share vertical, don't share horizontal. That's the take home. All right, thanks very much. Hope you've enjoyed this pair of episodes, and I'll be back later.